We have become expert at producing lots of things. But how can we replicate the things that we need most in the world? More creative thinkers. To create environments and experiences that foster creativity will require us to fundamentally rethink how we learn and educate today beyond the industrial era.
So the founder of our work, David Edwards, tried this a number of years ago at Harvard University. And at first glance, his class looked like a lot of other project-based courses, but there were some big differences. He started by bringing together students from different disciplines and asking them to start speaking the same language together. And then he didn't want them to be worried right away about the immediate feasibility of their ideas, but instead he wanted them to start by dreaming without constraints and tapping into their personal passions. And some interesting student ideas started to emerge from this, like soccer balls that create off-grid energy when you kick them, and devices that can message sense across the ocean. And so David started to wonder, were these great successes just a result of his individual students' talents, or could his recipe for creativity really work for anyone?
So David asked me this question, and I said yes. And in early 2009, I also got Boston's Mayor Menino to say yes, and to announce on this very stage at his State of the City address that we were starting the ArtScience Prize, an idea development curriculum that would serve high school students from across the Boston public schools. And later that same year, David and I were able to get some audience members from the very first TEDxBoston to say yes to our nascent idea as well. The only problem is that none of us really knew what we were saying yes to. Let me give you an example. Every year, we select a scientific theme at the frontier of knowledge. And in 2009, our theme was neuroinformatics, a topic at that time that returned a Google search with a Wikipedia definition, some very complex academic articles, and not much else. So as we began our very first program year, not only did we have to figure out what neuroinformatics was, but also things like, how do you write a curriculum that must constantly adapt to the twists and turns of learners' ideas? But that's when we came to our first big learning, that sometimes you have to compel the future to happen. We could have planned the intricate details of this program for years until we were confident we knew all of the answers. But instead, we jumped on the need for this type of learning, and by doing so, we reinforced what we always tell our young people, that there is urgency to bringing about change in the world.
So you see, in many educational environments, young people are told that there should be a delayed payoff to what they're learning. But they're really interested in learning, and even the intuitions of their educators should take a back seat to policy recommendations and printed curriculum. But we know from experience that young people should believe that there's urgent need in the world to hear their ideas and their solutions, and that they should be given the space to work on world issues that matter today. And as we really embraced that mission, we found that hundreds of young people from across Boston public high schools were brave enough to join us as well, and they tackled some really big ideas in neuroinformatics that year, like Mood Me Content, an art installation built on your brainwaves; CoachMaster, a sleep analytics device that helps users to learn as they dream; and even Robotic Intentions, a bear-shaped therapeutic hugging robot designed to combat teen depression.
Well, it's true that everything didn't go perfectly that first year, but with one program and a giant bear costume under our belts, we felt pretty confident that we could do it again, even better next time. But then I met this woman, Susan McCalmont. We spoke on a panel together in North Carolina, and when she heard me talk about the ArtScience Prize, she got so excited that she asked us if we could replicate in her hometown, Oklahoma City. So of course, I said yes.
And I said, are you kidding? We had barely completed one program year, and we could hardly articulate to ourselves what we had just done, let alone explain it to someone else. But with our colleagues, we did just that. We tried to explain it, and after 10 weeks of really late nights and endless cups of coffee, we arrived together at Logan Airport with 2 tickets to Oklahoma City and a 200-page program replication manual. And as we pilot tested the replication of our program in that year, we had to figure out how to replicate not just curriculum, but also skilled practitioners, engaging learning environments, and the cultural contexts that support innovative work. And this taught us both the trials and the rewards of dreaming big. And we started to see those big dreams pay off that year as young people wowed us with pitches for edible water bottles and biodegradable golf balls.
Over the next few years, we embraced that philosophy and dreamed bigger and bigger and bigger. And what we started to understand was the diversity of what innovation and creativity looks like in different cultural contexts. In Singapore, they were taking their first steps away from rote learning. In Saudi Arabia, they were more focused on investing in patents. And in the UK, they were most interested in joining a global creativity network. To not just make these diverse programs work, but to make them work well, required us to think outside ourselves. To help our program partners achieve their big dreams not only required us to travel around the world, but also to think about how to adjust our curriculum to work in vastly different contexts. Well, by 2012, we had a great program model, a robust international network, and a global community of practitioners. For a second, we even started to think we knew what we were doing. But then our founder announced the scientific theme for the year, synthetic biology.
So I have to admit, I was really scared by this topic. As our education director, I had to sell this topic, applying design and engineering principles to biological systems, to our educators all over the world, not only in places that were well established in the synthetic biology field, but also in states where genetic modification goes against religious beliefs, and even in countries where the basic materials for DNA extraction cannot be legally obtained. But I started to realize that I wasn't alone. I began to see that fear reflected back to me on the faces of our educators and even on those of the students that we began recruiting to the program.
And in fact, the presence of fear is quite common in traditional educational environments. And I'm not talking about the kind of fear that comes from the school bully or from having to walk through the halls with a bad haircut. I'm talking about the kind of fear that comes from curriculum itself. Fear of not knowing the right answer, fear of standardized tests, and fear of following a path that might end in failure. By and large, this fear is placed on the students. In fact, oftentimes, teachers are asked to pose questions to which only the teachers know the answers to keep this balance in play. But when we faced that program year in synthetic biology, we shared the burden of unknowing equally across learners, educators, and staff. And through this process, we really embraced this concept, that fear is for everyone. And this fear pushed us to radically transform everything, the way we supported and prepared our teachers, the way we worked with young people, and even how we pushed the students' ideas themselves.
So as we began, we met students like Rachel and Henry. In their first class sessions with us, rather than asking them to drill in on the basics of cell regeneration and polymerase chain reactions, we instead had them engage with themes like cutting and pasting, not only through the lens of gene recombination, but also through algorithmic automations, and Chuck close paintings, and found poems. And we seeded them with questions they'd never see in a biology textbook, like, could you design self-healing fabric by integrating living tissues into your clothing? We had them engage with the public by exhibiting their ideas in progress and by engaging outsiders in their first experiments and prototypes. And as Rachel and Henry neared their final project pitch night, we no longer saw fear. We saw passion for their idea, a dream for bringing photosynthetic organisms from water to land to add oxygen to the atmosphere.
And as all of this was happening, other people started to notice this passion too. The Walt Disney Company approached us and asked us to partner with the Boys and Girls Clubs of America to reach thousands more young people through programming for middle and high school students across the United States. Right now, those programs are about to enter their second year, and we are entering into a new phase in our network's history as well, and one that you can get involved in. Just across the river in Cambridge, we're about to open our second worldwide hub, modeled after our cultural center in Paris. When you visit Le Laboratoire Cambridge, you can compel the future through culinary innovations at Café ArtScience.
You can dream big at our opening exhibition, Vocal Vibrations, which combines spiritual awakening, music, and touch.
And you can think outside yourselves by participating in big ideas through our lectures and programs.
You can even embrace fear by getting involved in the creative process yourself.
These are some of the things that we can offer to our young people: to dream, to fear, to think, and to compel them in ways that will inspire them to change the world. Thank you.